Remember a few weeks ago, the Benchmarks Foundation told us that Johannesburg is the most radioactive city in the world. It also says at least 56% of residents are suffering from respiratory diseases. But the Mineral Resources and Energy Department didn't really agree. There were some areas of uncertainty around the regulations around uranium deposits on old gold mines and gold mine dumps around the department. So let's take the conversation forward with Mariette Liefferink from the Federation for Sustainable Environment. Thank you so much for coming through, Mariette. I received inputs from you, which I really appreciate, because we had been having this conversation almost ad hoc, haphazardly, a story that's sort of bubbling under, not really paying attention. But having read what you sent me, I'm convinced that there's a bigger story that we as people in Gauteng and in Johannesburg should be paying a lot more attention to, but we're not.
Yes, I think as background information, I wish to refer to some established facts. In other words, it's well documented that there are approximately 400,000 people that are living within the mining belt in informal settlements, and these settlements are on mine residue deposits. Most of the mine residue deposits are radioactive. Besides that, our gold ore co-occurs with uranium, and therefore the tailing storage facilities, 270 mine dumps or tailing storage facilities, some of these are in the process of being reclaimed, contain approximately 600,000 tons of uranium. Uranium, as you know, has an extremely long half-life.
Yeah.
So it presents risks for geological...
Please run that figure by me again, the tonnage of uranium that they contain.
600,000 tons.
My goodness.
As a result, that was now historically, there was a migration of the radioactive, elevated radioactive materials into the wetlands. The tailings are also being used for construction material. For that reason, large areas in the Central Business District of Johannesburg, it was found by the Council of Geoscience, contains elevated levels of radioactivity. The wetlands, for example, include the Wonderfontein-Spruit, which flows to the Vaal River. It had been identified to contain 36 radioactive hotspots. Many of these sites have no access control, no fences, no warning signs, and the Wonderfontein-Spruit catchment is densely populated. It has been well established too that the principal radioactive pathway is the inhalation and the ingestion of radioactive dust. Yeah. And the deposition on crop.
Mariette, why is this an issue that the average South African in Soweto should care about? What makes this an issue for, all South Africans and not just people who have the privilege to sit and, you've attained your lower order needs and now you can afford to think and worry about the environment?
Yes, it's well established that uranium is radioactive, low in radioactivity, but its decay products are high in radioactivity. It also has chemical toxicity health implications. It can cause nephrotoxicity, kidney disease, or kidney failure. It can result in transgenerational impacts and endocrine disrupting compounds. But what I would like to perhaps raise today is I was a board member of the National Nuclear Regulator.
Yes.
The National Nuclear Regulator, not the Department of Water and Sanitation or Department of Mineral Resources, is the principal entity to regulate radioactivity.
Yeah, talk to me about that, because I had an official a few weeks ago from the Gauteng Department of Mineral Resources, well, the representative in Gauteng, who gave some explanations, but by the end of the interview, I was not satisfied that anyone within government is taking responsibility, especially for those mines that are abandoned. Basically, it's them saying that there used to be mines that were mined by people, but right now they are abandoned, and I couldn't get a sense of, do they know the levels of radioactivity that people who live in these areas that are close to these old mine dumps are exposed to? Tell me about the NNR and the work that you did there, and what's their position within this story?
So the NNR was appointed the National Nuclear Regulator in terms of the National Nuclear Regulators Act of 1999 to protect the public, property and the environment against nuclear damage. Nuclear damage is defined in the Act as any disease, injury, sickness or death to a person, or damage to the environment or to property as a result of ionizing radiation. The NNR unfortunately interpreted its mandate very narrowly and only regulates radioactive waste on licensed sites. So any radioactive waste outside licensed sites remain unregulated. The Department of Environmental Affairs does not regulate it, since they do not regulate radioactive waste. As a result, the National Nuclear Regulator then developed a plan, criteria and requirements for the remediation of these contaminated sites. Regrettably, there are capacity constraints, and if I may refer, because our organisation was part of the advisory committee of the South African Human Rights Commission pursuant to its findings.
As you do that,
yes,
I read excerpts of that report from 2016. So this shows already that this was an issue of concern enough for a Chapter 9 institution in this country to undertake some kind of work to investigate it. But not only them, various other bodies have investigated it, including the Gauteng government itself. But just about the South African Human Rights Commission, it's a Chapter 9 institution, and we all know that their findings and remedial actions are binding. They've come up with specific remedial actions. Have those happened?
No, it has unfortunately not happened. I read to you, if I may, just short extracts. The Human Rights Commission found it was pursuant to its national hearing on the underlying socio-economic challenges of mining-affected communities. They found the NNR, National Nuclear Regulator, experiences huge capacity restraints and does not possess the funding nor the human resources necessary to conduct proper planning, coordination and monitoring activities, and remediation plans can only be implemented when finances are available. So, the Commission found that there is an immediate need to address the lack of clarity concerning the state's role and responsibilities in undertaking remediation of contaminated mine sites, particularly where such sites have been abandoned. The Commission further finds that in the light of the potentially severe and long-lasting impacts of contaminated sites, the state must prioritize remediation and funding for the NNR.
Right. Lastly, Mariette, just talk to me about the Cod Action that you are involved in. What are you trying to achieve in that litigation?
We are in court action against inter alia the Department of Mineral Resources and the Department of Energy, which is now in one department, because of the mining company Mintails, who has liquidated, but in the process has an unfunded environmental liability of 460 million rand. Many of the mine sites, like the Tudor Dam, such as the Lancaster Dam, these are radioactive sites, declared radioactive sites. It is now abandoned with no access control, no fences, and also with no warning signs. It is in very close proximity to densely populated areas in Kagiso.
Mariette, thank you so much for coming through and for the detailed inputs that you sent to me via email.